morning, everyone. Part of the inspiration for this is I had a number of questions from some of you and from different people that I've been seeing this last week about different things that have helped me in terms of my spiritual journey and the things that have helped me to kind of develop and to grow and to have an understanding of metaphysics and spirituality, and so I thought, well, I haven't really shared a lot of the things that have been some of the help that I've had over the years, other than the one thing that's always the help, and that is spirit, and divine, the truth. But there are also things here and technologies that I have explored and learned from that have really helped to deepen, I feel, my experience of spirit, of the divine. And I was inspired because it occurs to me that Charles Fillmore, who was the co-founder of Unity, many of you have heard the story of how Myrtle Fillmore experienced a healing, and Charles was of a more scientific kind of mind, and so he hypothesized that, well, if one person can do this and can experience healing, he explored and basically tried to understand what went on and how she experienced this healing experience. And his thinking was, well, if it can be done once, it can be replicated. And so he had more of a scientific kind of thinking that, well, if one person can do it, it's possible for someone else to do it. I believe that's true for all of us. If it's possible for one person to accomplish something, ultimately, in some way, it's possible for all of us to experience it, especially in terms of spirituality. And so Charles was a very interesting person who tried to really understand spirituality from a scientific perspective, and he also tried to understand science from a spiritual perspective, and didn't see those as being two different things. And Charles also was really kind of on a cutting edge of a lot of the new discoveries that were going on around the turn of the century. We're talking about, late 1800s, early 1900s. And so he was really kind of on the cutting edge. In fact, many of you may not be aware of, but Charles Fillmore was one of the first ministers to put the services of Unity on the radio. And that was not heard of. He put church on radio. I mean, that was really mind-blowing for a lot of people. And they all said, well, that's never going to work. This radio, first of all, a lot of people at that time still thought, well, this radio thing is never going to go anywhere. And so you think about that. And one of the interesting things, stories that is told about that experience is that Charles Fillmore, being one of the first people on radio, during the early parts of radio, they didn't have very good modulation of the signals. They didn't have good frequency modulation. And so there was a phenomena that would happen during early radio that the signals in one place would actually skip on the atmosphere and travel, in some cases, all the way around the world. And so there's a story that, and it's true, that the one place in the world that has the most Unity churches other than California is Nigeria. And the reason is because during the early days of radio, the signal would skip around the world, and Nigeria was one of the places that could really pick up that signal. And on Sunday mornings, or actually a different time of day, of course, it was actually a prime time in Nigeria to be listening to radio. And so they would be listening on the radio to Charles Fillmore and the Sunday morning service. And that's how a lot of Unity churches got started in Nigeria, is people recognizing and writing in then to Charles Fillmore, asking for more information about this new teaching of Unity. So that story always fascinates me because Spirit has an amazing way of using whatever is available to allow more truth to be shared, but it's also available for us to actually learn and grow from in our own experiences in life as well. So I started off in kind of on my spiritual journey fairly young. I won't go all the way back to the beginning, but I was in the Methodist church for many years, and I was actually planning on becoming a Methodist minister. In the high school, I studied for what they call a license to preach. And I went through a lot of self-study and correspondence kind of courses with the Methodist Church. And as I began to go through that, I realized that there were a lot of things that they were talking about that I just couldn't quite agree with. And I'm not saying that they're wrong, it just wasn't really fitting me and it wasn't speaking to my soul. And so when I got into college, I started learning a little bit about meditation. I went to a training, an introduction to transcendental meditation. How many of you ever done transcendental meditation? We got a few folks, I'm sure I have. I actually didn't take the training for transcendental meditation, but I began to study different thoughts and ideas about meditation. I began to practice meditation. And as I began to practice meditation, I began to have some very unique kind of experiences. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Anybody here, how many of you, you don't have to, I think most of the people in this group probably meditate in some way. Maybe not, maybe I'm wrong. How many of you feel like you have a challenge with meditation? I'll just be honest with that. It's a challenging thing, it can be at times. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some possibilities and some ways that I think can be helpful for you, because I'm absolutely convinced that not only our spiritual growth, but our overall simple well-being is extremely enhanced by the simple practice of meditation. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So I started meditating, and one of the things that began to happen to me is that I began to have interesting experiences in my life that I couldn't quite explain. And some of those experiences were of a psychic nature. I began to see things that before they were happening. I began to have experiences of knowing what people were thinking even before they said what they were thinking, which really weirded me out. And then I also had experiences of knowing things that I had no way of really physically knowing. And so the practice of meditation, one of the things it does is it takes you actually beyond your normal everyday kinds of thinking. Now, one of the things that began to happen to me is I began to have what I later discovered were out-of-body experiences. Now, out-of-body experiences may be kind of woo-woo for a lot of people, and that's okay. The biggest challenge that most of us have, I really believe today, is having an in-body experience. We're busy up here in our brains, and we're off somewhere else doing something else completely, rather than really truly being present to where we are and what's going on right here and right now. And so I'm not necessarily saying that having an out-of-body experience is something that, if you want to learn how to do that, there are ways to do that. And so I was having these kind of experiences, and at the time I really thought, I was a little concerned about it, because I never experienced anything like that before. And I was having experiences of being in places and knowing things that I had not experienced physically, places I had never been, and having experiences of connecting with people on a level that I hadn't really not connected with them before. And so there were kind of some strange things that happened, and I really thought at the time that I was probably going insane, and some of you listening to this may think I'm going insane, and that's okay. It was true for me, and I experienced it. So I shared some of this with a good friend of mine who went on to become a psychologist, Dr. Gary Bettis, and at the time he actually was getting his doctorate in psychology, and I shared with him some of my experiences, and he said, well, that's really fascinating. And he went back to his psychology class and some of his professors, and several of them said, well, it sounds like what he's having is out-of-body experiences. And, oh, there's a name for it? I felt relieved that there was a name for it. And apparently, I'm not the only one that's had that kind of experience. I suspect that there are a lot of people who've had this kind of experience in life, just didn't know what it was or know what to call it or how to classify it in our logical, rational minds. And so he introduced me. One of his friends, basically in the class, said he needs to check out the work of Robert Monroe. Any of you familiar with Robert Monroe? So Robert Monroe has done some significant research on the mind and the brain, and he wrote an amazing book called Journeys Out of the Body. And I'll tell you, Journeys Out of the Body helped me to realize that I may be crazy, but there's a lot of us that are. I'm not the only one that's had this kind of experience in life. And it really helped give me some assurance that these experiences were not necessarily insane kind of experiences. They actually are things that are a phenomena that happens a lot more than people realize, and to a lot of people. Most of the time people don't talk about it because it's not our everyday normal kind of thing. So one of the things that I did was I began to, interestingly enough, I got some clear guidance of when I wound up getting ordained in Unity years later. I wound up moving to Charlottesville, Virginia, and discovering that the Robert Monroe Institute was actually only about an hour away from where I was. So I wound up studying at the Robert Monroe Institute about this experience of being out of the body. And Robert Monroe did research on sound waves and was able to help people reproduce this experience of being out of the body using what they call binaural beats. He called the term hemisync. And what hemisync is, it's a way of listening to sound that will actually help you to move into a state where your right hemisphere and your left hemisphere of your brain are in harmony and balance. And by doing that, you actually go into a much more deep, relaxed, peaceful kind of state. So that was kind of my introduction to that kind of experience. And then later, I won't jump ahead too far, but later I learned another technique and another technology that's very similar that was kind of based upon this idea called holosync. Any of you familiar with holosync? Well, I'm going to give you an experience of this if you're open for it. So holosync is one of the things that really has helped me in terms of meditation. But before I get to that, I want to talk to those of you who've had some struggles or challenges with this idea of meditation. Because I can tell you, it's one of the most valuable things that you will begin to do for yourself to really be healthier, to be more centered, to be clearer in your life. It will actually help you to deal with the stresses that go on in life. It will help you to actually be in a place where you are both mentally, physically, and emotionally much more clear and centered and alignment with the truth of your being. And it will actually transform your life in ways that are just phenomenal. And so I highly recommend that if you don't meditate, that you take some time to start this practice. Now, meditation is a practice, and there's a couple of aspects of meditation that I want to talk about. One is the practice of meditation is, you sit in a comfortable position, maybe you light a candle, or maybe you focus on your breathing. These are the practice of meditation. And the purpose of the practice of meditation is to help you move into a state of meditation. And a state of meditation really is a place in you where you are really truly open and your consciousness is open to a greater awareness of who and what you are. It's a way of helping you open up to what Carl Jung called the superconscious level of mind. And it actually is a place where it can allow you to experience more of your intuitive nature and help you to really see and experience more of a higher understanding, a higher energy, a higher vibration, if you want to call it that, or a higher level of thinking, as Charles Fillmore would put it. There's a higher level of thinking that's available to every one of us, and meditation is one of the ways that we really tune into that higher level of thinking. It takes us out of our everyday normal kind of thinking and helps us to move into a place where we're open and receptive and to an inspiration and a guidance from a higher level of our spiritual nature. So, one of the things that really has helped me in that is recently is an application that you can put on your phone. And I've shared this with a number of people, and Julie started using it a while back. In fact, she started using it and didn't know I had been using it for years. And so, but if you're not familiar with meditation, if you would like to learn how to meditate, it's a great way of helping you to get introduced to the practice of meditation. If you already meditate, it's really a wonderful way to help deepen your meditation, or to have meditations that are focused on different awarenesses or ways that you want to grow spiritually. So let me give you, if I can, just a little example of some of the The other one that I find really valuable, Calm is one of the ones that I find really most valuable for starting off or for learning how to do different aspects of meditation. And it will actually help you to go into a deeper, more relaxed place and a more relaxed state of meditation. And it is... has wonderful nature sounds in the background, or it can be music. You can choose different things, different ways. And so those of you who would like to learn how to meditate, it's a great opportunity. The meditations are no more than 10 minutes. But even if you have some resistance to that, what I recommend that you think about doing is try meditating or simply just being still, holding your body still for 3 minutes. And if you can just hold your body still for 3 minutes, you'd be amazed how much more relaxed you become. All right, here's what you're listening to now is called Purification from the Holosync, using Holosync. And it's from the Centerpoint Research. And Centerpoint Research, their research has demonstrated that this technology can help people advance in their meditation practice to the level of Zen monks who have been meditating and practicing meditation for over 30 years. And it can move you into the deeper states of meditation much more rapidly and quickly than we can just on our own. And so it's a technique and a tool that's available, and I will be glad to share the links and any information about any of these technologies. If you're interested in enhancing your own well-being, enhancing your own spiritual growth, enhancing your own deeper connections, and moving into that place of peace and relaxation more easily. And you can look for those on our website and in our newsletter. And those are just 3 of the technologies that are available. I'm sure there are many others, but these are 3 that have really helped me significantly in my journey. So just take another nice deep breath. Breathe into the heart space. Let your awareness come back into this room, this time and place. Let your awareness be here, present, and now. And let's have an in-body experience. Bring yourself back into that awareness of being present here and now. So anyway, these are just kind of different people have asked me what are some things that I do to help me in terms of meditation and dealing with stress and dealing with life experiences, and I wanted to share some that have been extremely valuable for me. One is the HemaSync. I graduated and moved from that to really using the HoloSync, which I find actually for me is much more, allows me to move into deeper experiences of meditation. And then also the Calm, C-A-L-M. It's an app you can download. I think Calm is it's like $50 or $60 per year to use it, and you can use, there are hundreds, I think, of different meditations that are involved in that. So those of you who are interested in learning how and having something that will keep you moving in terms of meditation, these are great tools. And then the last one that I played for you was from the Centerpoint Research. And Centerpoint Research is a little more expensive, but definitely worth the cost, because you would listen to one level for more than a year. So I think it's like $179, but you would stay on one level probably for about a year or more. And it will lead you through meditations that really will deepen your meditation experience significantly. So if you have any other questions about that, then feel free to let me know. And otherwise, we'll move on. That was our meditation for today.